Go ahead and kick this off. Couple notes of process, etc. First of all, so one of the tenets of speaking is to tell people what you're going to tell them it, then tell them it again. I'm not going to do that. Another element is don't put slides up that are eye charts. Some of these are. In fact, some of these slides are meant for you if you want to read while I'm talking, fine. They're meant for you to be able to download later and read. This is essentially more of a brain dump, kind of a knowledge transfer. If you do have questions, raise your hand. I do, keep it interactive to an extent. Try to keep the pace moving as well. This year I am actually away from the podium and have a mic finally. You probably figure out very quickly that I'm hyperactive and I walk around a lot. And if I'm moving too fast, also raise your hand and say, whoa, dude, slow down. So again, my goal here is we're going to cover incident response. So you've heard the acronym DFIR, Digital Forensics and Incident Response. This focuses on the incident response part. We'll allude to some of the stuff in the digital forensics world, but this is not about forensics necessarily here. It's a process-oriented talk, and again, at the end I may have a second section. It depends how fast or slow this goes to go through a little bit more material. My goal here is knowledge transfer, and again, the focus of this is how to respond to incidents and having a process, having a plan ahead of time for if and when something bad happens. And the other thing I don't do too is I don't do like stupid bios, whatever. I'm Derek. Hopefully you find this shit useful. If you don't, throw shit or something. That's my goal, is here to give you guys some good stuff so you can go back to work with something to look at differently, something to do, action items. So security incident, one of my ugly slides. An assessed event of attempted access, unauthorized access, or information attack on automated information systems, blah, blah, blah. You can Google stuff. You'll get answers a paragraph long, 2 paragraphs long. You can drink beers with people and debate this shit for hours on end. What is a security incident? Someone I used to work for actually said, hey, why don't you just go with DUI? Destruction of information, unauthorized access, use, or disclosure, modification, or interfering with systems operations. See, that kind of covers it for the most part. Cool. I'll steal that. And he said, go ahead. So I kind of use the DUI model for that. Each organization's going to be a little bit different. So I can't really answer this question for anyone in this room, even myself as I change jobs in different employers, what people consider an incident and what they don't. It's a tough question. I always think of incidents as 3 different kinds, right? So human resources related, someone's investigating someone for improper web usage, emailing off stuff they're not supposed to email, etc. And that goes into the next one, the confidential leakage. Are they stealing company data and giving it to a competitor? Call list, customer list, etc. Attack-related incidents. Have we been hacked? Whether it's humans or a combination of humans and malware and stuff like that, trying to exfiltrate data from the company. Also remember nowadays too, keynote thing for incident response, it's impossible to get hacked by something basic. It's always got to be complex. Just read the news, right? It's always a sophisticated attack. Remember that. It's got to be sophisticated. Always. Your marketing people and legal people will put that in there. Malware related also falls into the 3rd category. 3rd category is where I live. I avoid human resources shit like the plague. Anybody support proxy logs for a company ever? I don't want to know what my fellow employees are surfing on the web because I had to once. And it made going to some meetings really weird because it's like, wow, you're a freak. You're thinking in your mind. It's holy shit, I thought I was twisted, man. So I avoid that stuff like the plague. Confidential data leak incidents just get so legal so fast, and it just makes you kind of like fall asleep. To me, the fun stuff's trying to figure out whether or not we've been attacked or someone's stolen shit off our network. Again, difference between privacy, right? Privacy incidents are the ones where you're trying to say, maybe somebody put out the plans, the blueprints for the new whatever widget we make, etc., right? Also, sometimes it turns into privacy incidents when you have lost or stolen equipment, where you might have to notify if there's stuff on there and it wasn't encrypted properly, customer data, etc., right? And other thing to keep in mind too, and I'll just throw random tidbits in, this is one of them. Something I'm socializing with my company now is because we have PCI stuff. I'm like, PCI is not your biggest concern, okay? The FTC is going to come after your ass for customer information. That's what gets you a $12 million fine on the spot and 10 years full of external audits you got to pay for. It ain't the credit card shit. So if you think PCI, who gives a shit? Credit card right here. Want it? Anybody want my credit card or debit card? It's one freaking phone call. Even off my checking account, I don't lose $50. I make a goddamn phone call. I'm back in business by the end of the day. I don't give a shit. Customer information for identity theft, different story. So the privacy word always reminds me of that. Incident classification. Okay, the next two slides suck. And they suck because they haven't been updated in years. There's a point to them, meaning, because you can pick this stuff apart here. You've got incidents, usually a rainbow color. I like just 3 colors. These are like 5 from way back when. Severe, high, medium. A lot of that goes off maybe if you have an incident response process for just IT incidents in general, for service disruption, et cetera. Number of customers affected, number of systems affected, et cetera. The point is, you're going to need a way to differentiate stuff. So some of this significant loss of data, large number of systems compromised, you know you were attacked for sure, you're not sure yet. You know, these end up having to be in your documentation somewhere. How do you differentiate a really bad from a really good one? So I put these slides, and again, some of the stuff you can download it later, look at it. This is meant to give you some ideas. This is what I've seen other people do this based on. I've used some of this as well. So I actually, just to be complete, put all 3 of them there. Which a 1 is like bullshit, you're just getting scanned, right? So what does your incident response process have to address? And now I start flipping, everything goes in acronyms, right? So priority of incident response versus SLA work, what do I mean by that? BAU responsibilities. The world can't stop, and you can't have everybody from every team working your security incident necessarily. If you get Sony'd, you might. If you get a really bad attack that's taking down enough of your network, you're probably going to have everyone all over the place doing everything, right? Priority of your containment. Example, you've got a system that is compromised. It's just a malware type thing. It's not really stealing data. It might be infecting other companies. What's it worth to you? If you make $1 million an hour on that system, you may not take it down to patch it and remove the infection till 6 o'clock at night. Right? Idealism's for high school and college students. We're in the world of business. If you work for a company that makes money, start learning business. Best way to learn business, get a checkbook. Best way to learn risk, buy insurance. That's the business you're in. You're not here to say no as part of security, and that includes, you don't just say, I'm going to contain this right away and shut down the business immediately. We got to stop all third-party connectivity right off the bat. No, you're not going to be allowed to do that usually. You need to know about your emergency change control procedures. The next point, I think, is one of the most important points in the deck. Long ago, probably over a decade ago, SANS made a step-by-step incident response guide that I read that changed my life forever, and it had in it, and the newer versions don't, I don't know why the hell they don't, you got to have a gold and a silver team. Gold is management, HR, legal, etc. They decide when to notify business. They make all the decisions about what you can and can't do that's going to cost millions of dollars by cutting connections. Silver team, keep the geeks on their own bridge. Keep the managers the hell off the bridge so the silver team can get their work done. Silver teams usually run centrally by someone on the security team, right? And then you have SMEs, your primary and secondary preferences, but if people are on vacation, you know, they're on vacation, right? So the gold-silver team model seems to work out very well. That means you have 2 sets of bridges. And sometimes then people from the gold team bridge will come down and hang on the silver team bridge to find out what's going on and figure out how to put it into like non-technical speak to give the executives an update. Anybody ever been on an incident where you had just one combined bridge? Freaking nightmare, right? Oh my God, you talk about people getting in the way. And you know what else? You don't want to be thinking about shit out loud as geeks in front of leadership, man. It sucks. They don't understand what you're saying. And anytime you say something that sounds innocent to you, they might be panicking. They just hear certain words not knowing what the hell the context is, and they start freaking out on the call. Bad news. You want to get the gold and silver team in place. So there you go. The gold team starts expanding over time. The worse shit gets. Oh God, got to call the lawyers. And again, you want lawyers on your phone when you're trying to do forensics and containment and stuff? Hell no. Marketing people? No. We already know what the marketing people are going to say. We were hacked by a sophisticated threat. Right? It was a double advanced persistent threat. Yeah. Who the hell is going to say they've been hacked by something easy? We were hacked by a kindergartner. Yeah. We were hacked by somebody that watched a freaking YouTube video, right, on how to do shit, and then 10 minutes later our data's gone, because you could do that with a SQLi. No, it's advanced. It was advanced SQL injection. There you go. Anybody know how old SQLi is? That's like 14 or 15 years old now when that was first put out. Anybody remember Security Focus? The forums, when they were talking about how cool NetFlow would be and how it would help you with forensics, and now we got products 10 years later finally that do that shit. But yeah, this is old shit, some of this stuff. Silver team, incident coordinator. Usually from the security team. What does that mean? Means You're the poor schmuck that has to document the shit out of everything. You've got to be able to say who did what and when. You've got to make sure whatever people are doing things are gathering the evidence properly. You've got to make sure a chain of custody shit's being filled out, right? You're going to have to write the after-action review report and run those meetings. It's actually kind of fun, so I shouldn't say. It's kind of neat to run an incident. And then you use SMEs, subject matter experts from various platforms. I believe in the hub-spoke model. And I believe no matter how mature your environment is, you could be CMM, Capability Maturity Model 3 on all your shit, everywhere in your company. You're always going to have SMEs that know stuff, right? That inside knowledge that you get from being there for a few years. Those are the people you're going to desperately need if something really bad happens in your network. They're going to know about the routable segments that were added last Tuesday that you weren't notified of. Because you're trying to figure out where the hell this thing can spread to or what they can get to, right? They're going to be the ones that know, yeah, actually we had to disable the personal firewalls last week because of an issue, right? Shit like that. You're not necessarily going to get that from your change control thing. Anybody here believe change control has saved the world? I am an ITIL guy. Man, change control's been a pain in my ass for a decade, and we still have outages based on unplanned changes, even with change advisory board meetings and all that stuff. So, can't beat just internal knowledge from people. How does a typical incident flow? Reported by X. Any SIM vendors in the room? Oh, bummer. Oh, there is? Okay. This one always pisses off a lot of SIM vendors. Thank you for being honest and raising your hand. I usually piss off a lot. And I have a lot of buddies, good friends that work for SIM companies, by the way, in log management. Something else I've been involved with for well over a decade, well worth the time. Most of the weird incidents and the really bad ones in companies I've been at over the years have not started from an alert from my SIM tool or my log management tool or my IDS. They almost always start with a phone call. It's always almost the layer 8. Remember the OSI model, layer 8 humans? It's the layer 8 IDSs, the sysadmins or the users that start this shit. It's just weird how, and you're always like, oh, damn, we did all this other stuff. And even if you don't have shelfware, we implemented the stuff correctly. And how does it happen? We get notified? Frickin' phone call, right? So you get notified of a potential incident. You assign an incident coordinator. Now you want to determine if there's an incident or not, whether or not you need to even pull in the gold team. Start making sure your chain of custody stuff is there. That's where you start the timeline. Don't forget the timeline. Especially if you're running one in the middle of the night, trying to reconstruct a timeline hours later, you don't want to do that. That's like getting really, really drunk, and then the next morning you get together a group of people and all try to figure out what the hell happened the night before. You don't want to do that on an incident. And then you're also responsible for the report. So again, if it's not an incident, then you might throw it off to a cleanup effort for a triage queue. Like, okay, nothing really, really bad happened. We need this malware cleaned off 10 PCs. It turns into a ticket inside Remedy or whatever, right? And again, the coordinator starts making sure the channels are for communication are open up, gold bridges, silver team bridges, etc. Another one of the most key points today. Now, and understand, in my mind, I'm always speaking for the enterprise. That's at least 100,000 PCs, at least 10,000 servers. I just go on that scale. I have worked in environments much smaller. I'm currently in a pretty small environment. I don't like 5,000 servers, 10,000 endpoints. And I know that there will be people that are in even smaller environments. So sometimes this can't be done, absolutely, but you want to, no matter what, obey the rule of 2 if there's any way possible to do it. If you're a 2-person shop, I had my boss start learning forensics when I was in a 2-person shop a little bit as far as so we could both do this stuff. You don't want to put someone on an incident alone, ever. Rule of 2, no one's perfect. As much as I've done some of this stuff, I guarantee you I'll screw shit up. I'll guarantee you, especially at 2 or 3 a.m., I'm going to screw something up. Rule of 2, you violate it at your own peril, because typically you're going to pay for that if you don't obey it. Sequestering the IR team, kind of old schoolish. I leave some of this stuff up here. By the way, a lot of these slides are over 10 years old, like that Sans PDF as far as a lot of the content. So it's just, there's some new twists on it in here, but that's one like from the old days. Sequestering the IR team. Is anybody in the same physical location anymore? I guess it depends on geography of your company's facilities, size of company, etc. Maybe you have to virtually sequester people. Maybe you have places they go to quiet rooms so people don't overhear them talking in the cubes. Something to think about ahead of time, right? You need to know the policy for incident details. That means you're going to write an IR policy. That's why you want to review it and know it too. The gold team's going to throw it at you. That's just to get you. I've seen someone say, but in the policy it says this. It's like, oh shit, we didn't update the policy. And then you're getting called out by the gold team in the middle of your own freaking response because you got a better thing that you do now, a better method that you didn't regress back into your policy. Don't forget to keep all that stuff in line. And again, sometimes legal will have cutoff points where they take ownership of the incident. And then there's gold and silver. I just put a lot of stuff to keep hammering it in people's head on things like the gold and silver team. I really believe in this. It's worked for me everywhere I've been. It has saved me so much time and effort and hassles. Big believer in that. So again, how was the incident communicated? Basically, management bridge, tech bridge is what this comes down to. And again, see where I'm doing, and that's why if you download this later and go through it, what's the other thing I repeated? It's one of those, I do use some basic tactics. There it is again, that damn rule of two. I've been burned by that. Bad. Embarrassingly bad. Luckily, I didn't get burned paycheck bad by it. So try to get at least 2 people on stuff. This one, again, is a different view. Yeah, gold, blah, blah, you've already told us about that. They tell you when to do emergency change controls, all this other kind of stuff. Silver team, right, they have the conference bridges. They know all, gathering the evidence, all that kind of stuff. What's this? So some of you may have incident management teams, and they manage incidents throughout the company. SAN went down, right? Domain controllers died, Sev1 outages, stuff like that. Sometimes they're going to front end your IR process. Not necessarily a bad thing. Work that out in advance. In larger companies, incident management's going to set up the gold bridges, gold team bridges, and silver team bridges. They have all the protocols for how to get the business engaged even a lot of times. They have the statusing updates that they do through text messages without any real details to, get sensitive information away. So make sure you talk with those folks first as you're architecting all this process and procedure around how you're going to respond to an incident. They may have half the communication stuff documented and maintained for you where they do it, because you'll see some of the downloads you get off the internet. Oh, have your communications log and have your emergency contact log. Well, if you have an incident management function, that might already all be there. And if it's only missing a couple contacts, you add yours into that. So a lot of times this will help front end and take a lot of almost like admin work off your hands, so you can focus more on getting the incident response process in place, which after you do that, you can start focusing on getting the forensics in place. Process before tools. Every time. You will get burned if you don't do that. Now, another thing I use from SANS, 6-step process. Preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, follow-up, lesson learned. I live and die by this. I've implemented this literally at least a half a dozen companies personally as an employee, and as a consultant, I've had dozens more flip to this model. I totally buy into this model, right? So again, once something's classified, you've got an incident, this is the way you run through it. Preparation. Boy, I was polite on this slide. Usually I don't put arguably. It is the most important phase. Without preparation, you're going to have really a lot of problems. You can wing it to a certain extent. Been there. Before I learned this kind of stuff, I used to wing it, so been there. Again, IR policy, processes, forms and report templates, forensics toolkits and scripts. Here's another important point. You'll probably hear me repeat myself a few times. When I do, there's a reason. It's because it's something I've been burned on. Anyone here have standardized company images? Pretty much, okay? If you have desktop standard images and they change hardware, they're doing a massive hardware change, did you retest all of your live memory acquisition tools on it to make sure they still work with the new shit? You don't want to find that out at 2 a.m. Been there, done that. So when you see later I mentioned tabletop exercises, for me now it's tabletop plus. Always do your evidence acquisition. Practice it bi-monthly if you can, meaning every other month. When you get new people on your team, if you're a larger team, test your processes. Best way to test a process document, sit down with someone new to the team, throw it to them and have them do it. If they can't do it, you got to fix your doc, right? So especially in more process procedures doc, the more detailed instructions. But you've got to run through this stuff on a regular basis. That's part of preparation, is making sure your shit works. You have 3 different images. Can you image off all 3 images? Getting the hard drive image is easy, and you're going to find where a lot of times you're going to do a lot more live forensics nowadays. We were already seeing that 10 years ago. All we could do then is run DD against the RAM and go ahead and run strings on it. Now you got shit like volatility, right? So I mean, you're going to do more and more live forensics. You got a lot of endpoint tools that are starting to add the ability to do a little bit of live forensics and get shit out of memory on the machines out there in the world to see what's going on. So that's all part of preparation. Again, policies, needless to say, approved by upper management, clear and to the point, practical and enforceable. Not going to go through this stupid thing again. This is actually a nice one. Source unknown found on the internet. I wish I had the damn source for this. I actually copy and paste this shit all over the place for policy documents. It seems to shut people up. So it works as a definition because people don't question it. It's just the normal stuff. It actually has the DUI stuff baked into it. So again, policy, process, procedure. Policy is a statement of intent in my world. I know this is another one people can have tons of conversations on. Process is the workflow of the framework, right? Kind of specifies named resources or teams when it has to. Procedures are step by step, right? It has to update when your toolkit updates. Remember, procedure document. People always get afraid of all this. They're like, oh, we can't do this much documentation. Yes, you can. Print, screen prints, bullet points. That's mostly what your procedures documents are. Workflow, the process, detailed workflow, telling what steps you do things in, outlining that. That's a 2 or 3 pager. You do it, you look at it now and then, you're good. Policy is just a high-level statement of intent. They shouldn't change that often. That's like, we're going to respond to shit in a structured way. Cool. Forms. You'll see a lot of free downloads out there. Determine it. Maybe make a separate form for determining whether something's an incident so you're not filling out too much paper on it, but you want a paper trail. This goes back to where you're trying to justify your staffing over time. Newsflash, if you're in a company that you got to make money, you got to worry about budgets, which leads to headcount, staffing justifications, etc. Do you have metrics on how much stuff you look at and the time you spend looking at it just to determine it is nothing? That's the kind of stuff you need to do so people know why you need the amount of people you do for incident response, right? Incident reports, same information as the above, plus what's the exposure to the company, what systems and apps are involved, locations, details of what you do when you contain it, list of who knows about it, details of the eradication, your detailed timeline is in here. There's a lot of good stuff. I know they used to have document templates you could download from SANS on this. Something I did, hold on, external communications, forensics worksheet, evidence tags, chain of evidence, contact lists, that's a lot of shit, right? So something I shamelessly stole from someone that I was consulting with. He's like, why don't you just put that stuff in Excel? And he had a little bit of Excel. I'm like, damn, that's a good idea. So I put all the stuff in Excel. Different tabs for evidence tags you can print out, chain of evidence forms, external communication logs, incident timelines. The report itself follows the 6-step process, so it makes you think, what do we do to identify? What do we do to contain? Make sure you do your follow-up. It's like, what a cool way. By the way, Excel, I mean, let's face it. Those of you that work in corporate America, because I know some might be government, some might be not-for-profit, et cetera. In corporate America, Excel is everything. If you want something to happen, put it in Excel. Action will be taken on it. It's just the law. Microsoft Office, Excel, PowerPoint, and Word, but especially Excel. So I just started doing, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a corporate geek. I've crossed that bridge long ago, lost all my idealism, sold my soul to my paycheck and all that shit, right? Why don't I just put everything in Excel? So that's kind of what I do now for everything. We have DLP incident forms that we do. Guess what? Excel. Because someone's going to do something with it. You ever see someone, that's why it's a great attack vector, by the way. Anyone sees in a company in general, especially your user population, whether it's IT or not, people open Excel files because they figure, oh, that's work I have to get done. They attach them to ticketing systems, all kinds of stuff. Cheat sheets. One of the things I do when you download this, and I'll throw it up in PowerPoint format. By the way, I'm such a moron with, so this MacBook I'm speaking off of, I finally got, it's an older one. My mom had it, didn't use it for anything, so I guilted her into giving it to me. Then I realized I hardly use Macs at all, and I'm like, I couldn't get the PowerPoint to translate, so I'm actually speaking off a PDF. Foolproof, right? But so when you download the presentation, I give you the presentation so you can take the slides and modify them to your needs, right? And I put lots of links. The links are always hot. Lenny Zeltzer's cheat sheets, those packetlife.net cheat sheets for other shit too. They got regular IT cheat sheets, good stuff. Checklists and cheat sheets. There's a reason astronauts and doctors and emergency medical technicians use that shit. We need to kind of copy that from them, right? It helps you not forget something at 3 a.m. They're not the end-all be-all. You may go off script on some things. We don't have enough checklists and cheat sheets in our industry. And people don't take them down and customize them enough for their organization. Kind of an opinion piece, I know, but I've been burnt by it. Like, oh shit, I forgot to do such and such. Ooh, I didn't do a right blocker when I took that image. Now it ain't worth shit in court. Cheat sheet would have saved you on that one, right? Again, tabletop exercises. I consider this part of preparation. Not meant to find every process gap. It does reinforce your training for silver team members out in the different platforms. Right? Gold team gets them used to some stuff, but I focus more on silver team for tabletops. Include evidence acquisition. Anybody here had to figure out at 2 a.m. how to use a tool when they're doing an incident response? Because I have, and it sucks. It sucks bad. The time to figure out how to get something done that you need done in an investigation is not 2 or 3 a.m. It gets really, really ugly at that point of the night. So you want to figure this stuff out ahead of time. That's why I said preparation is absolutely priceless. You notice out of the 6 steps, the rest of them, there's less material on, the most materials on preparation, because that's the biggest thing you have to do is prepare all this stuff. What tools are you going to use? Are you going to use FTK Imager? Are you going to use DD off a Kali CD? What are you going to do? What are you going to analyze stuff with? Are you going to use Mandiant Redline? Are you going to use volatility? What commercial tools are you going to buy and why? Are you going to go with Encase? Are you going to go with FTK? If so, what components of those tools? You're going to get the legal hold modules with it. You got to think about all this stuff. But it starts with the process. And that's something you'll see me hit on later as well, too. Number one thing that pisses me off, that I think makes us look amateurish, people, qualified people that you invest in, process and technology. You don't get to talk your way out of that shit, okay? For some reason, everyone thinks if a 2U box won't do it, get a 4U box, now we're covered. Installing a tool versus implementing a process is a big difference. Installing a tool, you can usually tell, number one, it's usually installed to the system partition because people don't have IT backgrounds and don't know you never install a damn thing to a system partition, right? So they just install the shit, they click through, figure a few things out in the GUI or at the command line and call it a day. You need to read the book and see the movie. Anybody ever done both? And you compare to when you just see the movie versus read the book versus both. You need to do both in this shit and in our field. And by the way, if you're picking tools and buying tools without the process already in mind, you got a problem. How the hell do you know what you're buying something for? What are you trying to achieve? Because by the way, part of your process documentation is going to tell you your scope, purpose, assumptions, and dependencies. How many people support forensics on Macs? How many people support forensics on iOS? Currently where I'm at, we don't. We stated it. You want Mac forensics? We're going to hit you with a fee. We're going to outsource that shit. We got a contingency contract. Prepare for $30K out of your frickin' budget for the investigation. We don't do Androids right now. We don't do iOS. That's shopped out too. So why would we worry about buying tools that can do that? That actually puts us in the range where we can do more stuff easier for free. If you don't have your processes and procedures in place, and a lot of the live acquisition stuff is just going to be open source anyway, a very good way. I'm a big proponent of open source. How the hell do you buy all these freaking tools? You don't even know what the hell you're going to use them for. But you're just going to buy that shit. Then you just click the install button and figure it out. Man, if you ain't reading the book, RTFM, that saying is older than I am, and I'm 48 years old. There's a reason the saying's that old. It's almost as old as the fight fire with fire. As soon as people know how to write a frickin' manual, that saying came out, right? You got to do both. So, part of preparation, knowing why you're doing what you're doing. Identification, again, a lot of times a phone call, may get it with your SIM tool, if you get it tuned properly, or other solutions, right? So here's the thing, identification also includes that people don't think of, scoping shit. If the sign of this compromise, now known as IOCs, indicators of compromise, are these 5 reg keys, should we run a quick script to see who all is infected? That's part of identification, so you know what you have to contain, right? Also, anybody ever here, when you're at work, go to a command prompt on your Windows box, you're on your corporate machine, type net space view. You know what happens? You know who your domain controller is, who your mail server is, you know what you can infect from your machine to other machines. By the way, my favorite pet peeve that pissed me off on that command's been out since, I don't know, before Windows XP. And people get into a network and say, now I'm going to port scan and find other targets. I'm like, for Microsoft targets, once you're at user level permission on a machine, net view, dumbass. Now you know where the domain controller is. Why make noise scanning for shit? It'll tell you where every system is that it can see. Helpful also in forensics. A lot of sysadmin tricks are forensicator tricks, are pen testing tricks. They're all kind of combined that way. But you want to figure out what all can happen bad from what you think was compromised. Containment can be removal after you gather evidence, especially live evidence. You don't just pull a network cable right away nowadays. Well, we never did. You got to gather evidence first to figure out what's going on, your live data and stuff. Could be ACLs. I remember having ACLs in the old days when it was the worm days, having ACLs that would shut down parts of the network automatically. The network team had those ready to go for that next Microsoft worm that was going to come out. And that was back, obviously, early 2000s, right? Don't forget when you're containing, you probably got to get the gold team involved. change control procedures, stuff like that. Eradication, again, make sure you have your evidence first. Volatile or live data, disk images. Eradication, you can use AV and cleaning utilities, sometimes custom scripts. Sometimes your AV vendor can be your best friend. If it is a malware-related thing or it has a malware-related component, they can make a cleaner. If you already have the shit deployed to your 10,000 desktops, use that infrastructure to roll out your fix versus inventing a new wheel, right? Recovery could be rebuilds, especially in the workstation realm. Patching and updating everything, verifying systems afterwards. You can watch in your SIM tool if they start doing stuff again, or your NetFlow tools to see if the system misbehaves. You can scan to look for stuff if it's got active listeners with a vulnerability management tool. Sometimes part of recovery is the implementation of a new technology. Anybody know how many worms it takes to get personal firewalls at a major insurance company? Took 3. After the 3rd worm, we finally got our damn firewalls on the laptops and desktops and stuff. It's kind of interesting. Took forever. Follow-up. I'm going to put this at number 2. You're assuming you got all the stuff to do everything because you prepared for it, then you do it and you execute. This is going to be really important too. What do you do after the incident? Figure out process gaps, fix them. Maybe technology gaps, technology that you need, address that, right? Architectural changes have come to mind. Sometimes it takes a security incident to get that IPS in line in between you and your third-party people that are on a dedicated third-party VPN concentrator. You knew that was the right architecture all along, couldn't get it sold. The incident report from the shit that just cost you a bunch of money says this is actually the way to go. Now suddenly, poof, you got your third-party connections all audited, all going in through the same concentrator, and all behind an active IPS and with other monitoring, etc. Follow-up can be very important. So that's the last one. By the way, I just put example for NAC. I don't like NAC just because it sounds like too much work, but it's been one of those things out there. Some people use it successfully. By the way, anybody, if you were going to do NAC in a corporate environment, you know who you would, anybody have an idea who they'd want to talk to? Go talk to a major university. They've been doing NAC for years. Try to follow their model, even if you're not BYOD. They've got experience with it. I'm just saying, it'll save you some hassles. Follow-up after action review, separate slide for each because I think they're both important. Follow-up, I think more of where you're following up with the architectural stuff, trying to get approvals off stuff that you know will fix the environment. After action is where you're really fully documenting the lessons learned. You're looking deeper at policy. Sometimes lessons learned can be an indicator of a lack of a countermeasure, as well as just not one that just failed. Sometimes something that you could be, that you're missing completely, like some advanced protection that you hadn't thought of that actually would work, and here's why. Another one, the first one I don't like to be lost, is user awareness training. Not to open that can of worms. I've seen a lot of people argue for and against user awareness training, and depending on my day, it either makes me laugh or just frustrates the shit out of me. Because, I'll use an example. My wife could give a crap what I do for a living. In fact, she doesn't even really want to hear about my career at all. She's just not into technology at all. Yet, for the past 10 years, she's always amazed at the people in her workplace that click on stuff because she never does. See, the user training worked with her. Now you're not paying money because if you can find out how much money it takes to send a person to a workstation to fix the shit. So I do think there's a big bang for the buck for user awareness training. You want to feed stuff that you learn on security incidents into your user awareness training. What if there's a type of file you're not blocking because the business won't give you approval? No matter what, then you need your users to know that the shields aren't up on that. Like, hey, our business won't let us block .exes through email. They just won't. Say, I'm just pulling an example out of thin air here. You can't win that battle no matter what. Well, then you better make damn sure your users know that they're not covered there, because the users might just assume automatically the security team's doing their thing protecting the environment. So you want to be aware of feeding back into your training as well on this. Thoughts on outsourcing, because I always get asked the question. Live forensics, determining whether something's an incident or not, is pretty much in-house. Malware analysis can go either way. It depends if you want people doing SIFT and Remnix all day, figuring out exactly how the virus works, or you want to try to get it from your AV vendor. Maybe a combination of both. I can't give you the right answer on that, right? It depends on your staffing profile and your operating model for your security team, company's budgets, etc. Maybe only outsource imaging and advanced file system analysis. Do you want to go to court yourself, or you want to pay someone else that's good at it? Here's the other thing. you better learn how to gather evidence, because you're going to have to gather evidence for the consultants. They're probably not, you're probably not going to want to pay them to run around all over the country gathering evidence for you or the world. That's why so IR is typically what you keep in-house. It's one of the things when you outsource. You might get some of the DF, the digital forensics outside. The incident response, you own that shit, or your company does, right? So you probably got to have all this in place, whether you're going to go with an outsourced model or not. I think of outsourcing that which can be commoditized. That's why I said a lot of times I'll go for imaging at first if I don't have the time or don't want to build the infrastructure for people to image stuff. I might keep all the live forensics in-house because I'm just snapping the RAM off and using volatility or something, right? Yeah. Pretty obvious point of this slide. Always have a plan. You don't want to be winging this stuff. Learn how to structure stuff quickly. In the middle of an incident, you're going to live and die by the 80-20 rule. You're not going to get perfection any more than you do in any other service offerings. This kind of applies to InfoSec in general. Stop trying to get perfect. You can troubleshoot anything to death. You can nitpick anything to death. You can take any conversation to 15 levels further than you need to, right? Just like I hate using analogies because you can tear any analogy apart, but you got to kind of use them anyway to get your point across. But understand that you need to structure quickly. That's where checklists and templates they also help enforce consistent methodology. Like anything, it's all about the methodology. When people come to the security team and get different answers for shit all the time, that's a sign of an immature security team. What kind of brand are you putting out there? You should have all your stuff templating, looking the same. Process, procedures, checklists, service offerings, track the maturity of them, etc. This is no different than the other stuff you do versus, oh, we just installed a product and we just, look at the thing every now and then and we just click on shit. What the hell is that? Right? You're there to offer services. That's why I don't hide the fact I'm big on ITIL. Not the ITIL that leads to 800-page manuals, the ITIL that leads to shit you can do with a screen print utility. Right? If there's something you do, then you can do in your sleep, and you can't take the screenshots and write the bullet points to do it, bullshit. And if you're a manager and your people ain't got time to do this, you got the wrong people. It ain't that boring when you're doing screenshots. Golden rule. I've seen this one violated a lot. Don't panic. Don't let other people panic. Good responders don't panic and keep the panic level down because it's easy to start panicking, by the way. So, and that's one of the few times I actually legitimately worked a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy into a presentation. So tools, the DF of DFIR. Whether you call it incident discovery forensics, lives forensics, have we been hacked? Determine if a human's attacking you is kind of what you're getting behind it. I like to give links to stuff for people to follow up to things. Last week I went through every day on one of these links to make sure they're still alive, and I even changed some new ones out for you. All right, so, and if they don't, I'm going to be pissed because I literally did this last week. The internet should not change that fast. But, so you've got different scripts for Windows. Some of these are Perl, some are batch files. I think there might be one in there that has some, that's using PowerShell. Here's the issue on these kind of scripts and it's kind of a weird debate I have with myself as well, and I'm not sure where I'm at on this. I started out with batch files, calling external utilities, knowing that if I run like FileMon or ProcMon, you're going to see that it uses shit on the system. Some of the DLLs, it makes calls to it, etc. But it's mostly off system. So if I take a copy of net.exe for Windows and put it off on a USB, I'm getting the routing table, not if it's rootkitted, what the rootkitted routing table would give me, right? So PowerShell you can't do that with. But I'm seeing people use PowerShell more and more for forensics anyways, and I'm like, but you are on box. Even if you remote PowerShell, if that system's rootkitted, it's going to lie to you. And there's really no chance of knowing that with PowerShell at this point in time, it appears. I always speak disclaimers because, man, this gets really weird. Just something to keep in mind. By the way, my custom little batch files, I had some of the banks that everyone's name would know in here using that shit. Because it's fast. Give it to someone out in the field. Run this batch file. Give it back to me. Gives me back like 10 or 12 different MD5 text files so I could figure out what the hell's going on, whether or not I got to call an incident. That's why I call it incident determination. I totally made that up probably. I probably won't find that thing anywhere. Probably net results on a search. But I was always trying to figure out, is this shit real or not? These little batch files worked, man. I'd put them up on a network share somewhere and let people run it. Might not have been the most forensically sound in the world, but I did have MD5ing built into it. And it's like, I was even building a little DOS Norton commander menu at one point on it. Just so, get the event logs or don't get the event logs, because that's a lot more time to take. Sometimes I want to know what the hell's going on within about 15 minutes, right? So again, bats plus utilities. I always speak ahead of my own slides, by the way. So PowerShell and WMIC is always local. And again, if you look in ProcMon when you're running your utilities, Sysinternals are awesome, by the way. Totally. I use the shit out of sysinternals. Anyone with Windows systems, you end up using that a lot. But look in Procmon, and you'll see that it does make calls to stuff on the system. I don't know what that would mean if you had a rootkit on it in all cases. I don't know that anyone's taken the time to really enumerate all that out. Mine, I used to just do shit. I would write a batch file for something that I needed to get based on OS, and I would call the other batch files from within that one. And the basic response is the one that enumerated all the routing tables, netstat ANO, netstat ANB, all that kind of stuff. And for those of you, so in Windows, there's a cool command, netstat ANB, active network connections, but it tells you the binary, like outlook.exe, what exact port it's using. You didn't used to have that. You used to have to use like F port from Foundstone back in the day, or other utilities, CC ports to get that info. Now you can get it from the OS. By the way, that's also good for when people don't know, when you're trying to firewall stuff. We don't know what ports our app uses. Unix, LSOF, Windows, netstat-B. Just do the B. Give me that list out. We'll figure out these ports for you, right? Again, admin tools help with forensics and vice versa. So again, why do you want to customize the scripts versus just download what's on the internet? Well, obviously, it's different AV solutions write their logs different place. For servers, web logs, URL scan logs, you can tell how old this slide is. Holy shit. Wow, that's an oldie. Add-on for Microsoft Internet Information Server. What was it? 6 is the last time I think that was used? I don't know. It's been too long. I like to mention volatility. It's really cool, right? You can either run dump it or a tool called memorize, or you can use search for something to dump live memory. You can use DD as well. But then you run volatility, and it actually gives you stuff like a netstat AN look. It gives you if you do netstat on your computer, netstat-ANO, it'll show you your active network connections, trying to figure out what the hell your thing's talking to and where else it can go and stuff. So you can get a lot of that pulled out of the memory of a system now. And that's just a listing of some of the commands. So again, to reiterate the point, if you're using a tool for the first time in a response, beware, because you're going to have a lot of fun. Something I'm into now, what about environments where you're doing desktop virtualization, where the image is dissolvable? Hell of a business case for this. Saves on licensing and stuff, so it's probably going to happen in some environments. It ain't going to be getting your choice whether or not it should happen, right? What do you do? And as we move to the cloud, that kind of gets in here as well, but in a Citrix environment, you got NetScaler devices that can actually look inside and see who's doing what in the sessions as far as how long the session duration and what applications are calling off what server. For disk forensics, agents are kind of a no-go, right? It'd be hard to snap a memory image for volatility off of a server that had terabytes of RAM that all these sessions are getting served off of. What can you get? What's good enough? This is where you get with HR and legal when you get your plan together. What's due diligence? Disk forensics gets a little tough. You can snap the VMDKs that the stuff's running on. I'm talking non-persistent images, not persistent images. Persistent images, you can put your agents out there, VMDKs, BAU, right? Stuff, business as usual, stuff like that. Folders, they're going to remap folders for their profiles as well as their files. Now you got 2 sets of folders you're going to want to look at from a forensic standpoint. That might be where, the old trick, the absence of an artifact is itself an artifact, or vice versa. If they had their old terminal server keys are all empty, it means the admin cleared out where they were going to. If you look in the registry, you can see where people telnetted to, or puttied to, or RDP'd to. Well, where the hell does that go in a dissolvable environment? Usually it'll be in the config files that get written up to their profile directory. Make sure of that. Start figuring out how you're going to do forensics in that environment to figure out what someone did when they were connected into the dissolvable thing. You're not going to get everything you used to. Figure out what you are going to get. I'm actually working on this live now. That's why there's this much thought put into it, because I'm actually running into this scenario, and it's a bitch. So you're going to depend on your proxy, as always. DLP, a lot of environments, virtualization, it's going to change your categorization. They're all going to look like they're removable drive events, so you're going to have to alter some process there. FIM is normal. Antivirus seems to work in these environments. They've made it so it'll work pretty well, and you'll get the logging from it. You can still get value from antivirus, even though it's pattern-based and therefore supposedly completely, totally dead, just like firewalls, even though they work great for segmentation, right? In incident response, you'll think of segmentation in a slightly different way. Segmentation, think of it like a submarine. Turn off a valve so that room doesn't flood, so the ship doesn't sink. So I'm actually getting my house redone that way when I do the plumbing, so I can turn off one room instead of the entire frickin' house, right? If I'm having a problem with one sink, I should be able to just turn off, or one room, that room. But anyway, segmentation, they're also for that. Yeah, that, making those kinds of boundaries. That's why they're not dead. IDS didn't die like everyone said it was going to either. Bootable distros that you should be aware of. The classics, Helix, Fire, Kali, Sans, Sift, Remnix for reverse engineering. I just put these out there. If this is news to you, you want to get it so this is not news to you. You want to be familiar with this kind of stuff and what it does. And you can use the hell out of Sans and Remnix for a lot of the incident response stuff. Just put some links to rootkit detectors because people ask. Again, disk imaging, you can get hardware imagers. If you're doing enough imaging, you might have the money for it or might justify the expense for it. You just plug the hard drive in from one of your workstations and then image it real quick. I always just put a thing in for Network Security Onion, not to forget, network type forensics. Security Onion is awesome. Very worth the time to learn. Again, sys internals is a pretty standard thing. I put links to these books, Hackers Challenge. Has anyone heard of these books? 3 books full of real-world scenarios. I can't believe they wrote these. They're awesome. They give you the evidence, walk you through how they found it, but then you get to solve it, and they have the answers in the back of the book. This stuff's kick-ass. You talk about great free training, and they're tough. I felt stupid. Some of these have made me feel really stupid, some of the scenarios. I haven't even made it through all 3 books, right? But what I've done in these books, some of it's made me feel humbled in a good way. It's like, holy shit. Yeah, it's real-world stuff. And they'll be like, and you're working through files, tracing through what happened. It's kind of cool, right? I always like to give references to books. Some of the stuff, Sans courses I had, the Hacker Sans Sec 504 course was good. But I always put in, and I go to the latest version of the book. So some of these I've read the older versions and admittedly haven't read the newest version, but this is the newest version of that book. I am going to blast through something fairly quickly. I like to put bonus material at the end, and I've got the time for it right now. Operationalizing InfoSec. This applies to everything. I've already talked about half this stuff to you, so I might as well, that's why I put these slides in as a reminder. You're trying to provide a service. Think of your incident response like anything else you do, like your intrusion detection service, like your vulnerability management service for the company. You're building and operating a service. You need to get it as mature as you can. I took this right off Wikipedia. Initial, repeatable, defined, managed, optimizing. There you go. Woo, what the hell does that mean even? There's an idea for log management for you. This is meant for you to take back. You can take these slides and change them for different tools you have in your environment in general. How do you tell what's mature and what's not? How do you tell if your tool set's optimized or your process? It just is a way to get you thinking about it from a maturity perspective, right? Basically, you're looking for integration, automation, documentation, standardization. Can you repeat the stuff over and over, right? Operationalization. Who can do your imaging? Do you got to see your field techs can take a proper forensics image for you? In a big enough organization, you might want to, right? That's just how to build it. And here's the other one. People, process, technology. You cannot talk your way around this. If you think you're just going to buy tools and run tools to secure your company or your environment, we're going beyond incident response here into security in general. Biggest problem with the industry, everyone's right here. If you skip these 2, don't even bother with the 3rd. I'll tell you what, I can take the 3rd, whether it's open source, homegrown. Some are better than others. Some require more automation or more work to automate than others. But the reality is, what the hell are you trying to do? You need the people to do it right. You need to know what you're trying to do. That's the process, because the process, part of the process is, your scope, purpose, and intent of things, right? So again, processes are flow charts and bullet points. Procedures are just a shit ton of screen prints with bullet points. We've already covered this one, installing a product versus implementing, right? Anybody can install a product. And this is just an example for process documentation. What I mean by it could be a little section of a bigger doc. Sometimes you'll have a separate doc for some of these things. What's the roles and responsibilities? How do you handle the tool with naming conventions? For forensics tools, do you have a naming convention? So you have a different incident number for each one. Does that reflect in the file structure you're using to store your evidence? Right? What's the architecture? You got to think about where you're going to house all your stuff. Do you just have drives locked in a cabinet that if the building burns, you're done? Or do you now and then move them to backup tape and then have the backup tape, they come on site like an Iron Mountain, unlock the box, you unlock the box, put the tapes in, they go off site? That's part of your architecture, right? How do you maintain your products? How often do you update your forensics solutions? Stuff like that. And again, when there's RACI models, talk to the people you're going to make a RACI model with. You can't talk about how teams are going to work together and not have all the teams that are going to be expected to work together in the same room. And again, you're offering a service here. Some of the solutions, some people look at solutions more as tools-based, services more as process-based. Whichever works best for you, or you can combine the two. This book will get you into branding. I think we read enough technical books. We need to read some non-technical books. This will get you into being conscious of how to build your brand and maybe build your team's brand. My favorite pet peeve, again, this gets you a quick intro. As with always, I'm not saying everything in every book is correct. The Red Book, I think that should be required. I don't think people should be allowed to be an InfoSec if they don't read the Red Book, my own personal opinion, because it gets you to think about structuring, having your shit together. It's a little bit too detailed. You'll probably want to dial it down a notch, but it is only like that thick, right? And then the Phoenix Project is a story that kind of introduces concepts of DevOps and stuff. It's an idealistic story, but a great way to get some of the points across. And then I will have this posted Monday, sites.google.com/site/DP Milroy. And those are my dogs. Just curiosity. People get some good shit out of this. Good ideas, good stuff. That's my goal. This is like a knowledge. I'm hoping you have some stuff you can take back to your work, look at things differently, help you enhance what you're currently doing. So I appreciate your time. And if there's questions, if not, I'm here for a while. You can catch me out in the hallway and ask me stuff too. Yeah, the download is going to be at sites.google.com/site/DP Milroy. I'll have it up there Monday. I'll put it up when I get back home and get back in town. And I'll give you the PowerPoint so you can edit the stuff. That we can just take it and use it. So recommendation for is it an incident versus not an incident starting point. First, I try to figure out if it's a human doing something versus an automated script. Then I try to figure out if there's data exfiltration attempts or not right off the bat to figure out if something's really bad. Otherwise, it's just nuisance to me. All right, cool. Thanks.